Tonight, fresh off his election win and gearing up to take on Donald Trump, Mark Carney is also facing a test from within Canada.
If Ottawa had its way, Albertans would be left to freeze in the dark.
Pointed words from Danielle Smith as the issue of Alberta separatism heats up again. Plus, what Carney needs to do in the first days of a new mandate. At issue, we'll weigh in on that. As Canada's measles outbreak continues to grow, concerns about who's protected and who's not.
It's sad because there are the groups who do not approve of vaccinations and then they put everyone at risk.
What health officials are doing to try to halt the spread. Shamed and chased out of their community.
We're upholding our old laws.
A First Nation dealing with drugs and violence takes matters into its own hands.
From CBC News, this is The National with Heather Hiscox.
Thank you for joining us. Adrian is on assignment tonight. We have confirmation tonight that Mark Carney is getting ready to lay out his government's top priorities in a matter of hours, delivering his first news conference since the Liberals won the election. Carney is under pressure, facing lingering hostility and signs of division, both from a U.S. president who's relentlessly threatened Canada's sovereignty, and now from Alberta's premier, who's defending new legislation that could make it easier for that province to vote for its own sovereignty. Danielle Smith has said repeatedly she is not pushing for secession, but as Julia Wong shows, if enough Albertans support a referendum of any kind, she's made it clear she's willing to listen.
Days after the federal election, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is coming out swinging at Ottawa over clean energy regulations.
If Ottawa had its way, Albertans would be left to freeze in the dark.
Heated words as signs a different struggle is emerging, a renewed campaign for Alberta to separate from Canada. It comes after new legislation by Smith's government that makes it easier for Albertans to force the province to hold a referendum. While Smith says she's not pushing for secession, she argues a new federal government has done little to mend a fraught relationship.
When we tried voicing our very real and serious concerns about these regulations, they told us too bad.
We have had no consultation in regards to this at all.
This First Nations chief sent a letter to the premier, one of many saying separatist sentiments breach treaty rights.
This is a very serious issue in regards to separating with Alberta, and it has to stop. It's fear-mongering.
Treaty agreements are sacred and should come before a process like a referendum, says this expert.
Alberta thinks that even if just a political conversation, that it can muse or, just think about the possibility of separating without involving Indigenous peoples as the first step, that's a form of disrespect that's being shown to the chiefs.
The premier pressed on the issue.
I just feel like I'm not getting an answer, though, on whether this could be a risk in terms of the province's relationships with Indigenous people.
Well, I'm not going to prejudge what citizens are going to do for a petition. Once there's a petition on the table and there's an active discussion from citizens having achieved the requisite number of signatures, I'd be happy to answer your question.
One of Alberta's two Liberal MPs-elect says there are more important issues.
Canadians expect us to get down to work on defending this country, and I don't want us to spend a lot of time worrying about a separation argument that is ultimately such a fringe argument here in Alberta.
Former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is also arguing against separatism. He put out a long post on social media warning about the potential harms. CBC News also reached out to the Prime Minister's office for reaction, but did not hear back. But Mark Carney is scheduled to have a press conference on Friday.
Julia, what level of support is there in Alberta right now for secession? Any indication?
Well, there's a recent Angus Reid poll that found 1 in 4 Albertans would vote for the province to leave Canada. That means the vast majority of people here want to stay. Also, keep in mind, about 28% of Albertans voted for the Liberals in Monday's election.
Julia, thank you. Julia Wong's in Edmonton tonight. CBC News will have special coverage as Mark Carney lays out his new government priorities tomorrow. That coverage begins at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific, led by Power and Politics host David Cochrane, along with our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. You can watch on CBC News Network or anywhere you stream CBC News. Ahead of tomorrow's briefing, Rosie and the At Issue crew will weigh in with their expectations for Mark Carney's first days in office and assess the future for Pierre Poilievre. That's up in about 25 minutes. Elections Canada has changed the result of a Quebec riding, moving it from a Liberal win back to the Bloc Québécois. The riding in question is Terrebonne. Preliminary results had the Liberals winning there by 35 votes. But after the post-election validation process, the Bloc incumbent holds the riding by 44 votes. The change weakens the Liberal minority government slightly to 168 seats. The final result is still pending a judicial recount. Breaking tonight, Canadian auto parts manufacturers are getting a reprieve from Donald Trump's tariffs. The U.S. Customs Agency now says parts covered by North American free trade rules will be exempted. Nisha Patel is here with more on this. Nisha, manufacturers were bracing for that 25% tariff. What changes with this?
Well, that tariff still takes effect on Saturday for other countries. But if a car part is made in Canada, follows the free trade rules, there will be no duties. Now, there is still a 25% tariff on vehicles imported into the U.S., as well as on steel and aluminum. But companies will only have to pay one of those tariffs. They won't stack on top of each other. Despite all of that softening of those measures, there's still a lot of uncertainty across the industry.
Companies are anxious. They're worried about being the ones to shut down first, concedes the market space to somebody else that you never get back.
Car makers are warning that even reduced tariffs will create higher costs, slower sales. One analyst described rolling back the tariffs instead of getting rid of them entirely as like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Mere talk of tariffs is weighing heavily on Canadian businesses, as Flavio Volpe was just saying. What has the fallout been?
Well, General Motors expects that it could take a $5 billion hit this year because of tariffs. Stellantis sales are down 14% in the first quarter. That company also says it plans to move some of its production from Mexico to Michigan to try and avoid tariffs. And that's really been Donald Trump's motivation to try to get companies to shift their supply chains to the U.S. Getting car makers to do that, though, analysts say that could take billions of dollars, and it would take years.
Nisha, thank you very much for this.
You bet.
A major shakeup tonight at the White House. Mike Waltz has been turfed as National Security Advisor. It marks the first big turnover in Donald Trump's administration, despite plenty of turmoil over his first 100 days. But as Paul Hunter explains, the Waltz departure was a long time coming.
On the left, Donald Trump's then embattled National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
Have a good day.
Arriving at the White House with word soon to emerge, he was gone. The shakeup, the first major shakeup of Trump's new presidency, comes after weeks of pressure on Waltz and the revelation he'd added a prominent journalist to a high-level U.S. security group text chat on the texting app Signal. The chat came just ahead of this U.S. assault on Houthi rebels in Yemen and included highly sensitive military intel on it.
It's embarrassing, right. Yes.
On Fox News in late March, Waltz accepted responsibility for including on that chat, of all people, a journalist. Somehow.
How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in, it gets sucked in.
On Capitol Hill, applause on Waltz's exit from Democrats who insisted more must follow. Namely, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, also on that chat and author of its most sensitive aspects.
The Secretary of Defense should be fired and should have been fired before Mr. Waltz.
For now, Trump has other plans, quickly nominating Waltz to be U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and replacing Waltz as National Security Advisor, for now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will also continue at State.
The president has just written on Truth Social.
When that news broke among journalists, the State Department itself seemed caught off guard, including even on Rubio.
Do you know how long he's going to be serving in both roles?
It is clear that I just heard this from you. This is The magic, well, I have...
The State Department spokeswoman eventually describing the day as an exciting moment.
Adding, Heather, her view that it's all, quote, good news for the American people.
So, first shakeup of this Trump White House, Paul. Is there more to come?
Well, for the record, Pete Hegseth still has Trump's full support, so there's that. But on Waltz and so-called Signalgate, there's definitely more to come. Before he can be confirmed as ambassador to the UN, he'll face hearings on Capitol Hill and will take questions from both parties. Democrats already promising that for Waltz, it'll be brutal. Heather.
Paul, thank you. Paul Hunter in Washington. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the minerals deal his government signed with the U.S. is fair, historic, and good for his country. But Briar Stewart shows in Ukraine tonight the deal's getting a cool reception.
Russian drones targeted the Black Sea city of Odessa, an attack that was carried out around the same time that the U.S. and Ukraine signed what they're calling an historic agreement. U.S. President Donald Trump hasn't been able to quickly end the war like he vowed, but his team is painting this deal as a win for the U.S.
But it's meant to pay back the United States, this is the key point, for the hundreds of billions of dollars that our taxpayers have spent subsidizing the war in Ukraine.
While Ukraine won't have to directly repay the U.S. for that, Washington sees this deal as a money-making opportunity. But it also says it's a strong signal of its commitment to a sovereign, stable Ukraine. Under the deal, the U.S. gets preferential access to invest in new Ukrainian natural resource projects like coal, gas, and critical minerals. It allows both Ukraine and the United States, which supports us in our defense, to make money in partnership, said Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. But in Kiev, some are wary.
In my opinion, it would be harmful for Ukraine, and we were going to be occupied not by Russia, but with American.
I trust Ukrainian government. It's normal. I don't trust America.
So it's a positive signal.
This economist says Kiev needed to sign the deal. But even though the U.S. president now has more of a stake in Ukraine, she says expectations need to be tempered.
And this deal doesn't show enough evidence how exactly U.S. can help to bring peace.
So far, Russia has refused to agree to the proposed 30-day ceasefire. While it appears that Trump is growing more frustrated with the Kremlin, the White House hasn't followed up on any of its threats to roll out more punishing sanctions. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Pakistan is on edge tonight, bracing for a possible military strike from India in response to a deadly attack last week. South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji examines the newest flashpoint between the nuclear-armed neighbors.
The outpouring of raw pain at a funeral for one of the 26 victims of the terror attack hasn't faded. The target of last week's violence, tourists visiting the disputed Kashmir region. The deadliest militant attack on civilians in 2 decades triggered a security crackdown in Indian-controlled Kashmir, with hundreds arrested. And police warnings for residents to stay away from militant groups. The violence has sent 2 nuclear powers hurtling towards the brink of war. Sworn enemies India and Pakistan both claim Kashmir in its entirety, but only control parts of it. India's government blames Pakistan for having what New Delhi calls linkages to the attack, a charge Islamabad denies. This key border crossing between the 2 countries is now shut, the airspace above closed. And India has suspended a crucial river waters sharing treaty that Pakistan downstream relies on. A move Pakistani officials are not taking lightly, as they warn India is preparing for military action very soon.
Any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water belonging to Pakistan, as per the Indus Water Treaty, will be considered as an act of war.
There's no effect yet from putting the treaty on hold. But panic and protests saying no to water terrorism are growing. There's also seething anger and a desire for vengeance propelling India's response, experts say.
So the challenge for Prime Minister Modi is to calm public anger. He has to keep the country united. At the same time, he has to deliver a response that's proportionate and calibrated.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken to both sides, urging calm and de-escalation. As fears of more violence grow in Kashmir among a people yearning for peace and stability. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
In the Netherlands, people are set to honor the Canadian soldiers who liberated their country from the Nazis 80 years ago. Tomorrow morning, Adrian will host special live coverage of the commemorative ceremony from the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery, where more than 2,300 Canadian soldiers are buried. That begins at 8 a.m. Eastern, and she'll be back with more special coverage on the National. New measles numbers in Ontario and Alberta are showing a surge in cases, the vast majority in unvaccinated children. Jennifer Yoon looks at the latest on the outbreak and the frustrations for those trying to keep it in check.
A climbing gym, a recreation centre and a hospital. All places in or around London, Ontario, where people could have been exposed to measles in the past week. The potentially deadly disease is spreading fast in the province. Ontario is reporting 223 more cases this past week, bringing the total to 1,242 so far this year. And there are concerns not enough people are vaccinated to stop the spread. In Halton Region, west of Toronto, less than a quarter of 7-year-olds are reported to be fully vaccinated. Public health officials think the true number may be higher, but they say they don't have a clear picture.
People want to be protected. They just don't know how to report.
That has some parents alarmed.
It's sad because, there are the groups who do not approve of vaccinations, and then they put everyone at risk.
We should educate everybody.
Measles can cause a rash, cough, or fever. In serious cases, it can also lead to pneumonia, brain inflammation, and even death. It's preventable with a 2-dose vaccine. Alberta keeps a closer eye on vaccination rates. Only 72% of grade 2 kids are fully immunized. In several areas, vaccination rates are lower than 50%. And cases are ramping up across the province, 193 total as of Thursday, including in under-vaccinated towns like Taber. Health officials are scrambling to contain the disease, which spreads very easily among those without immunity.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about measles vaccines, about vaccines in general.
We need to be seeing the medical officer of health probably on a weekly basis. We need to see vaccination clinics popping up. We need to make it easy for people.
CBC has repeatedly requested interviews with the chief medical officers in Ontario and Alberta. So far, they have not been made available. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Quebec plans to bring in a full cell phone ban in all elementary and high schools starting next fall.
I want students to be more concentrated. I want students to talk to one another. I want students to succeed more.
The use of cell phones, headphones, or other personal mobile devices will be prohibited on school grounds, including on breaks and at lunch. Their use is already banned in classrooms. Also, by January of 2026, students will be asked to address school staff by Mr. or Ms. in a bid to increase civility and respect. Tensions are high in a BC First Nation community where associates of a man charged with murder are being shunned and their homes demolished.
Our ancestors, whenever somebody was exiled from their own territories, they were expelled from their territory.
Turning to traditional justice to keep a community safe next. Plus, North America's largest documentary festival shines a spotlight on filmmakers forced from their homelands.
More and more people are having to flee their countries because of war and displacement.
We'll look at some films made in exile and the hardships faced by those who make them. And later, celebrating a breakup Yukon style.
It's like Christmas Day in summer, right? You're down there and everyone's high-fiving.
We're back in 2. As Bay stores continue liquidating inventory, a report tonight says Canadian Tire has bid on some of the intellectual property held by Hudson's Bay Company. The Canadian Press cites two sources familiar with the sales process. HBC's financial advisor told CBC News, "We have received multiple bids and are evaluating them." Canadian Tire would not comment. A First Nations community in BC has banished a group of people after a man was killed last month on Haida Gwaii. As Brady Strachan explains, other First Nations communities have joined in, shunning and protesting the group as it left.
A community on the remote islands of Haida Gwaii off BC's northwest coast thrown into upheaval after an alleged hit-and-run last month killed 32-year-old Luke Pearson, described as a proud uncle and loyal friend.
Justice for Luke.
In the wake of his death, multiple homes owned by the bands were demolished, and the people who lived there banished over their connection with Tyson Young, the man charged in Pearson's death, and ongoing issues in the community associated with drug dealing.
This groundswell and perhaps movement is really a demonstration of the frustration of many administrations out there, many First Nations communities. You know, Skidegate isn't the only one that's dealing with the illicit sale of illicit drugs.
The family and associates of Young crossed a strait on the ferry and were met with resistance for hundreds of kilometers through several communities along Highway 16 all the way to Prince George.
No way!
In videos uploaded to social media, people lined the highway to support the victim's family and send a message that those banished from Haida Gwaii are not welcome in their communities either.
Our ancestors, whenever somebody was exiled from their own territories, they were expelled from their territories, and as they were leaving, their neighboring territories and all the allies that they've got are not allowed to serve them. They're expected to pass through the territory and continue on. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're upholding our old laws.
RCMP officers stepped in to escort the group, warning the actions of the protesters are bordering on harassment.
We want to make sure that they're safe, that obviously we don't want a criminal offense to occur and other people be brought before the courts.
The RCMP are asking for calm and for protesters to respect the court process. Police say they know where the group is heading, but they won't reveal that location in order to protect its safety. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Vancouver.
International conflicts are driving the work of a new generation of documentary filmmakers.
I think having a program that focuses on these very issues is urgent.
How the Hot Docs Festival is honoring films made in exile. Next. And Rosie's here with At Issue.
Hey, Heather. Tonight we're going to talk about Mark Carney's first days as Prime Minister and where his focus might be.
I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, let's make a deal.
So what are the PM's priorities as he begins his mandate? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and more.
This year's Tony Award nominations are out. Audra McDonald is up for lead actress in a musical for the Broadway revival of Gypsy. She's now the most nominated performer ever with 11 nods and the most wins with 6 awards. Tony winner Cynthia Erivo hosts the big show on June the 8th. North America's largest documentary film festival, Hot Docs, has a new and noteworthy category. The Toronto Festival is featuring films from war or conflict zones made by displaced filmmakers. Magda Gabriel-Selassie shares the important stories they're telling.
Waves of joy collapse into heartbreak in the documentary Khartoum. It spotlights 5 Sudanese citizens and the shattering effects of war.
It was the only chance that we can make a cinematic civilian voice that represents the struggle and the resilience of the Sudanese people.
After war broke out in 2023, the film's participants and the cinematic team were forced to flee to East Africa. Yet with the help of creative tools like green screens, they still finished the film and landed a spot on Hot Docs' new Made in Exile category.
More and more people are having to flee their countries because of war and displacement. So I think having a program that focuses on these very issues is urgent.
Most of Gaza is distracted now.
With the ongoing conflict in Gaza, this filmmaker felt the urgency to complete her documentary, Yalla Parkour. For over 10 years, she followed the lives of Ahmed and his friends, who did flips and leaped out of bombed-out buildings. For Ahmed, his talent was his way out of Gaza.
My full attention was showing how they treat with the conditions in Gaza, how they have this spirit that I eventually ended up calling the Palestinian spirit.
A desperate need to reveal complicated truths was also a driving force for the filmmakers behind The Longer You Bleed. The doc explores the endless stream of war images on social media and the toll it takes on young displaced Ukrainians.
It gave me this feeling that I'm not alone in this, like it has like this feeling of unity, which is, I think, very crucial for mental sanity and for survival.
While Hot Doc says it's delighted with the success of this year's Made in Exile program, the future of the category remains unknown. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Time now to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world and the at-issue panel's expectations for Prime Minister Carney's first post-election week.
At issue tonight, Mark Carney's first days. With the campaign in the rearview mirror, the Prime Minister is working the phones with international leaders and working on the priorities for his government.
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday, he said, let's make a deal. He's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
So what will be the Prime Minister's first moves? What's at stake in his first face-to-face meeting with President Trump? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it down for a third time this week. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. Good to see you all again, although I'll be happy to take a weekend away from the three of you. Okay, I want to start with the priorities. We'll talk about the President in a minute, but the priorities that we would expect the Prime Minister to do, the moves he might make in these first days and weeks. Chantal.
Oh, the list is so long. Trump is a priority for obvious reasons, and I'm guessing that meeting is going to take place sooner rather than later. I don't expect a lot of substance out of it, but the format will matter. And very few people, I can't think of any, walked into that Oval Office meeting and came out looking bigger than they were when they came in. Smaller has been the case, or confrontation is ensued. Then there is if we're talking international stuff, that G7 meeting that Canada is heading is coming up quickly. It's at the beginning of June. So time to, and when you're the host country, you're supposed to kind of try to tie it together, and that's a big task. Moving on to domestic issues, this is a Prime Minister who needs to present a cabinet. He's got new members, so he's got to figure out who does what in cabinet. He has to do it quickly. He wants the House of Commons to resume in May. He needs to prepare a throne speech, possibly and presumably a budget. It is a minority government. He needs to talk, or at least go through the motions of talking to opposition leaders, which he's been doing. And then he's got to talk to the provinces. The premiers, by and large, with a possibly 1.5 exception, that would be Alberta and Saskatchewan, have been rather positive about this election outcome. But that there is a lot on the plate of someone who has promised to do things like getting rid of interprovincial barriers by July 1st. I don't think he's going to be taking a break until after Canada Day at best.
Yeah, and he's talked to some of the premiers, François Legault today. I believe he talked to Scott Moe as well. So, I mean, it is a huge agenda in a very short period of time, at least for this first part of it there, Andrew.
Chantal, we gave a comprehensive list and still only scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, on top of which you've got a deficit that's now in the $50 to $60 billion range. You've got the mercurial Mr. Trump. You've got a set of very high expectations that Mr. Carney himself has contributed to. A lot of his rhetoric during the campaign was, you know, we're going to build things at a speed that we've never seen before. You know, we're going to build pipelines. Okay, nobody really defined exactly how they were going to get over the objections that had, you know, slowed down pipelines in the past. You know, these kinds of large projects and large promises are easy to make on the campaign trail, but you're now plunged into the middle of this. That's and right. Let's remember, you know, no actual experience of government other than being in the Bank of Canada's job, which is by comparison orders of magnitude simpler, as difficult yes. as that job is. Yes. And among other things, Chantal mentioned this, you know, he impressed me, let's put it that way, by a 23-member cabinet, but it was kind of just for show. It was a notion of a cabinet. Now he's got to appoint a cabinet that he actually governs with, and there'll be enormous pressure on him to increase the size of the cabinet and lose some of that reformist cachet. I'll be interested to see the size of the cabinet as an early indication of where he's going.
Althea.
I think cabinet shuffle could come as early as late next week. He has an interesting challenge ahead of him because he doesn't actually know a lot of the new people that he's elected or even any of the old people that he's elected. In fact, that cabinet, I think, only met once, the one that he selected before we had the election. That's going to be really key because of all the things that Andrew said that he wants to do on housing, for example, on energy. He needs to have the right people, the right mandate letters. He doesn't even have a permanent chief of staff yet. So there's a lot of kind of like the apparatus of government that needs to fall in line. I will say, though, that he does know how government works. Like, he has served at a senior level in the finance department. So it is an asset. And, you know, with the help of the former clerk, Jenna Charette, around him, like, the team around him at the moment knows how to enact change should they choose to drive it. And I do think that there's two opportunities. He has talked a lot about national unity and governing for all Canadians. He could pick apart the Conservative platform and take some of the things that he likes from it that the Liberals haven't already taken and put it in a throne speech. And also Mr. Poilievre on the campaign trail in the last few days was talking about how MPs don't need a summer break. They can keep plowing ahead and enacting legislation and change if they want it. So maybe Mr. Carney can take, if he needs to pass legislation through the House, he could take Mr. Poilievre's suggestion up and sit a little bit longer into July.
I personally would vote against that, but he's not
sure a lot of Liberal staffers would as well.
Yeah. Chantal, you want it in there, yeah.
No, but the other thing to keep in mind, and I was reminded of that, it looks like it's just 2 months, right? But I've watched governments come in, and if you do not put the right people in the right places, including the PMO, over those first 2 months, you stand to lose your first 2 years. That's been the experience of incoming prime ministers. So the stakes in getting it right away are really high. And the fact that, you know, even staffing inside the PMO is way up in the air, that kind of suggests that it's a huge challenge. And if you get it wrong, by the time you find your way out of those bad calls, a year and a half or 2 years will elapse.
What about this Trump meeting? You talked about raised expectations, Andrew. It would seem that is the case here as well, that Mr. Carney, Prime Minister Carney, has perhaps raised the expectations for this as well.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no, you know, one weird trick that's going to solve the Trump problem. No. You know, he is what he is. He'll say something on a Tuesday and then say the exact opposite on a Wednesday. It's not clear exactly how many cards Canada has to play in these negotiations. It's not sure what they can negotiate. It's not sure if he did negotiate it, that Trump would actually live up to it. So I agree with Chantal, I think it was, who said that this, you know, this is mostly just going to be an exploratory, get acquainted, try to set some ground rules for the discussions. And it won't go much further than that. Can I just add, I think one other interesting conundrum he's got is what to do about Pierre Poilievre's parliament seat, assuming that something comes open, and that's a question for Mr. Poilievre to discuss. But I've seen it argued, and I think I agree with this, that it would be better for him to try to get him in sooner rather than later. For me, I would say part of Mr. Carney's brand is I'm not quite the same hard-driving, take-no-prisoners type of politician. I'm a little more old school, a little more of that kind of fair play, you know, type of approach to politics. And I think it would be disarming in a way to, rather than delay and play the usual game of keeping him out of Parliament, to bring him in.
Yeah, I actually would expect what you're saying, for him to do that, for him just to let him have the by-election, win the by-election, and get in the House. But as we talked about on Tuesday, even that would take a couple of months. Just last 30 seconds to you, Althea.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen until the fall because you can't quit within like 30 days of the writ. On the Trump thing, you know, Mr. Carney may have raised expectation, but Mr. Trump has lowered them. So I don't think anybody actually thinks that there will be an announceable coming out of the meeting that has any substance. If anything, it's not going to be about like, oh, we have, you know, agreed on a pathway to negotiate a new trade agreement. I think it's going to be on tariffs. I think like that's the immediate threat. And if Mr. Carney can show any movement on the U.S. tariffs, I think that that will be a huge boon and a bit of a surprise, frankly, to many of us.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to look more at how the Conservatives are responding to the results this week and the future of the party.
Don't see any other option at this point that someone's going to have to give up their seat.
So what comes next? For the Conservatives, how secure is Pierre Poilievre's position as leader a few days after the election? That's next. At issue, Conservative leadership. Despite growing seats and votes for his party, Pierre Poilievre finds himself out of the House of Commons.
We need to have Pierre in the House of Commons, and the only way to do that is to have some kind of by-election.
But while he still has support within caucus,
people believe that he can, continue to grow this party and grow this coalition.
There is also some criticism from outside the federal tent.
I think the Conservative Party of Canada was very good at pushing people away, not so good at pulling people in.
So here to break down what comes next for Pierre Poilievre and his team, Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj. The past few days, it seems as though the Conservative leader has been making calls, he's been reaching out, he's trying to talk to, I think, most of his caucus ahead of a caucus meeting next week to figure out what they're saying, what they want. Althea, what is your sense of where we are a couple days now after the election in terms of his future and his handle on the party?
He must be so busy because everybody I spoke to this week had spoken to Pierre Poilievre.
That's good. That's what you got to do.
So he wants to ensure that there are no surprises when he walks into this caucus meeting that has been called for early next week. There is a suggestion that he might even call for a leadership vote right away within caucus to kind of like settle that question down and to encourage his members to actually adopt the Reform Act, basically saying, I'm not scared. The thing that Mr. Poilievre has that is an asset is that there's nobody actually within caucus or actively outside caucus really lobbying to replace him. And so he does have this kind of clean runway at the moment. But there are rumblings within caucus about things that they want to see changed. And you saw some of the changes this week, for example. There were Conservative MPs doing interviews on the CBC, speaking to journalists. People feel a little unshackled and they feel like they don't need, there is no more carrots that will go with the sticks for another 3 years. So they have more liberty and they feel they can demand certain changes. Yeah. There's a lot of anger directed at Jenny Burns, the campaign director, at the chief of staff, Ian Todd. I'm not sure how that is going to materialize within the walls of the caucus room, but there are a lot of unhappy people. And then the one thing that I think is on the minds of a lot of people who are unwilling to say so publicly is that one of the reasons the Conservatives lost, because they didn't win the popular vote this time, unlike 2021 or 2019, is actually because of Mr. Poilievre's tone and approach. And yes, that drew in the PPC supporters and that vote collapsed, but that can only help you win so many seats if the NDP remains low and the opposition is divided. If they want to win a majority on their own merits, the tone needs to be different. And you're hearing that even from the most aggressive MPs acknowledging that maybe they need to tone things down a little. And I wonder if they will ask Mr. Poilievre to tone things down a little. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's some of what the interviews are about, too. MPs doing interviews, again, with me and others here at the CBC, and talking about things because they have felt that they weren't allowed to talk about some of the stuff that they discuss in caucus, and now they obviously feel that their ideas are maybe or should be more welcome. Chantal.
No matter what people say on Tuesday, Mr. Poilievre is a leader on probation, as is any leader who does lose an election, and that did happen. it is a problem or a weakness for him to not be able to lead his party in the House of Commons for a number of months. And a humiliation, I would argue. But it is also that when you look at the results, yes, they're not as bad as one could have imagined, but what they do show is this could have been won. And there are mistakes that will rightly land on Mr. Poilievre's doorstep. The absence of an economic team he could have built. The fact that he could have made peace with the Premier Ford in Ontario, Premier Houston in Nova Scotia, and decided it wasn't in his interest. And the fact that he was told repeatedly that he was creating a backlash against his persona in Quebec that would cost him. And he just doubled down on that attitude. So when you look at all this, and you look at the fact that by the end of the campaign, Pierre Poilievre was less popular than the Conservative Party, you can survive 1 week, 2 weeks, Stockwell Day, and think that he was going to go down, and it took the time it took. I believe that in this case, Mr. Poilievre is vulnerable to an outside bid to unseat him over the next 2 years. And that the way he treats caucus may determine whether he can survive that.
Yep. Andrew.
Yes, he's probably likely to survive, but he's clearly weakened. I find myself in the opposition of being preempted by Mr. Poilievre, because I was going to say, that they should they should vote to avail themselves of the power to remove the leader. They should then promptly have a secret ballot vote on it, and they would very likely vote to reaffirm his leadership. But it would be in his interest to show that he was getting out in front of this and not trying to hide from it. And it's in caucus interest to stamp the idea and the precedent that he governs with the consent of the caucus and can be removed at any time. And I think that will induce a little newfound humility in Mr. Poilievre, that certainly when it was riding high, you know, that old showbiz adage of be careful how you treat people on the way up, you know, it can be pretty rough on the way down. But they're still faced with this dilemma, which is not only that he pretty clearly cost them that election, both in terms of his leadership style and in terms of the strategic decisions that they made, but it's hard to see how he's going to improve on it in the future, particularly when you're looking at the situation with the NDP. There's one of two things has to happen for the Conservatives to win. Either they have to keep the vote split between the Liberals and the NDP, which he's not proven very good at, or they have to expand the base so that they can win in a two-party scenario. And he's not proven particularly adept at that either. So even if they're not going to get a different leader anytime soon, the leader has to be different. He has to find a different gear and a new tone and a new voice and a new approach if he's going to have any hope of improving on this result.
30 seconds to you, Althea, then I got to go.
So yes, you can say that he cost them the election, but a lot of Conservatives believe that he actually brought them to where they were at 40+%. And so they see him as an asset. And I think Pierre Poilievre showed us during the debates, for example, that he can strike a more adult, calm demeanor, less aggressive, no name-calling tone. He did that during Timon Alpal as well. He did it in that speech where he was that Caroline Mulroney introduced him, you know, addressing the Trump threat. He's capable of it should he wish to do it. And he is disciplined enough, I think, to show that. But I agree on the vulnerability. And it will be very interesting to see who he picks as the interim leader. Does he pick somebody that continues the trend that he has set? Or does he inadvertently give somebody a platform to kind of change the image of the Conservative Party that he no longer fits, like we saw with Rona Ambrose, for example?
Yeah, that will be interesting. I don't know if that will happen as early as next week, but I suppose it could as well. Okay, you guys have done a lot of work this week. I thank you for all of it. So does all of Canada, frankly. That is at issue on The National. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk about Elizabeth May's push for relevancy in Parliament. You can catch that on YouTube or the At Issue podcast. Now back to Heather in Toronto.
Thank you, Rosie. Up next, the Yukon River breakup brings Dawson City together.
Summer's officially here. People are jubilant.
The annual icebreaker is our moment. You're looking here at an aerial view of the Yukon River as the ice started to break and the waters started to flow. The people of Dawson City celebrated the end of winter as they always do. They showed up to give the changing season a warm welcome. And tonight, their tradition makes our moment.
Since 1896, Dawson City has run a breakup pool on the Yukon River. When it breaks, people bet on the day, the time that will happen. The fire hall has this loud siren, and you can hear it from one end of town to the other. It's like summer's officially here.
Awesome.
People are jubilant. Winters can last 7 months or so, and so it can be a slog. It can be a long time. And, you know, the river is really representative of that. And it's like a breath of fresh air rolling into town, you know. The birds are here. You can smell the river. It's just a whole, it's like opening a window in a stuffy house after a long winter. Winter's not, it's not coming back, right? The ice is gone. We're not going back that way. Summer's here. It's awesome. Everyone gets excited. It's even more exciting if you got the winning ticket.
It gets better because Paul did get the winning ticket. He won the pool. He and one other person guessed the exact date and time, April 30th, 10:56 a.m. Paul's going to use his prize money to buy a membership at a local golf course. Enjoy it. For all of us here at the National, thank you for watching. You can find us anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app, or you can subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Heather Hiscox. Good night.